Let's discuss with tonight's panel. New York Post columnist Carol Markowitz is here, radio host, Democratic strategist, and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall as well, and Echelon Insights analyst, plus she's an author. Stephen Kent is with us. Carol, Dr. Fauci, we'll all recall, has informed us that he is the science. He himself is science. Now he's also the law. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah, it really is amazing because I hadn't heard from him in a while, and I quite enjoyed that. I think it's really wild that he continues to be on our television screens. He's actually responsible for a large amount of the misinformation over the last 2 years. I wish that somebody would hold him accountable, but nobody does, and he continues to just spout random things on television. And I mean that because one day he'll say one thing, the next day he'll say another thing, and nobody ever says, wait, you just said something different on Monday and now it's Tuesday. I would love to never see his face on our TV again, disappear into, obscurity the way he should.
His face is right next to your face.
Let us move on.
Literally on the screen. It's like a screenshot. Like you've got, picture in picture. There they are. Look at that. The
Dang
two
it,
of them.
guy.
the odd couple right there. But I understand what you're asking for. Maybe someday in the future, there's more hot air coming out of Dr. Fauci than apparently whatever leaf blower is operating in someone's neighborhood. Leslie, let me ask you this. As a Democrat, is it helpful to your party to have Dr. Fauci spouting forth with these various pronouncements as we get closer and closer to the midterms? Because I think it gets people like Carol extra itchy to go out and vote.
It's true.
And it sounds like Carol wants to cancel, and I'd like to cancel the leaf blower in my neighbor's yard. My apologies for that.
Now, I was wondering who was the culprit. It was the Democrat. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm going to blame the Republican leaf blower. Listen, Anthony Fauci doesn't speak for either political party, but I can tell you who does and should speak, in my opinion, living with a medical professional who lived through the hell and may live through the hell again of a pandemic, and that is our healthcare workers, our medical professionals. And we don't go to politicians when we're sick. And we also, looking at the numbers from the past, we know that we can't trust everybody in this country. Not everybody will get vaccinated. Not everybody will wear masks. Not everybody will social distance. Not everybody even believes that this virus is real, that you can catch it, or that you can transmit it, especially to more of our vulnerable population, people who have underlying conditions, the elderly, and the young. So I don't think it helps. I don't think it hurts. I think at the end of the day, there are people out there who look at and believe science, whether they consider Dr. Fauci to be at the helm of that, and then there are people that don't, and that's part of the problem here, and that's why we're still having more than 2 years after the onset of this, a discussion, a debate, confusion, and anger about masks and mandates.
Next time, Leslie, you should have the leaf blower literally in the room, and you could have that wonderful effect with your hair. It would be very dramatic, and I think your points would be even better. Stephen, here's the problem. There's a combination.
I don't know if that's an insult or a compliment.
It is a compliment. I don't even remember what I said, but it's a compliment for sure. There's an arrogance-ignorance combination here with Fauci. I'm not calling him ignorant on science, although there are plenty of doctors who disagree with him on some of these scientific points. He seems to be ignorant on the Constitution and extremely arrogant when it comes to his view of science or exemplifying or personifying science, as he's said before. Couldn't he just maybe stay in his lane and try to persuade people, if he thinks that they should be wearing masks on airplanes for whatever reason, if he doesn't believe that the filtration systems work or what have you, shouldn't he appeal to that and talk about why masks are a good idea, as opposed to wading into the constitutional system of checks and balances as if, oh, what is this judge, or this judge can't come in here and tell us what we're doing? Actually, yes, she can, right? That's our system.
Well, it's absolutely the case that all who gain power are afraid to lose it, and Anthony Fauci is absolutely not immune from that. But you will find, if you kind of look into the public polling here, that he does enjoy a little bit of public support over the perspective that masks should be maintained on public transportation. It's the case as of at least March that Republicans and Democratic voters combined agreed up to 58% that masks should maintain in those sort of public transportation environments. Now, more Republicans actually feel that way than you might expect, and I think that that's sort of a twisted normalcy bias that you sort of see in play. But it's really, really bad politics, and it's kind of shocking to see play out that the Biden administration would punt it back over to the CDC to make this move for them, because they're going to be the ones who eat it in November when people are mad that they got their freedoms back and then had them taken away again. It's the same kind of effect that you see play out with social welfare and benefits. As soon as the government gives something, they can never get it back without looking like the bad guys. And the Biden administration and Democrats are going to be the bad guys here.
Meanwhile, President Biden finding it more difficult by the day to keep his own party in line. Nervous Democrats in Congress increasingly speaking out against the impending repeal of Title 42, which we mentioned in the open. That's likely happening next month. That's when it's scheduled to happen. These Democrats rightly fear a border crisis morphing into a complete border meltdown. And it's no coincidence that a majority of the most vocal Democrats on this front are seeking re-election in November. Oh my, go figure. So will the White House actually listen to the party's concerns or push ahead on their own? All right, Leslie, it's rough out there for your party right now. The polls show that. We'll get into it with Tom Bevan in the next segment here, breaking down some of the numbers. A border crisis that is increasingly in the headlines and spiraling is probably not what the Democrats need at this moment, given everything else that's happening. Do you think the president would be wise to listen to this chorus of voices and say, maybe the whole Title 42 thing, let's punt that for a while?
If he were just politically motivated. And now some people are going to laugh or shake their heads. I don't think that President Joe Biden is motivated by the polls or by, people who are up for re-election in districts that are a bit red or purple or in border states. But you have a good point, Guy. Politically, immigration is one of the top issues among both Democrats and Republicans, and we can add independents as well to that. And so people who are up for re-election, especially in these border states or the more red districts within their states, are concerned about that. But here's the bigger picture, all right? Title 42, in my opinion, I know I'm not alone in this, is a Band-Aid on something that needs immigration, major reconstructive surgery. And that major reconstructive surgery is comprehensive immigration reform, which both Democrats and Republicans have been failing at in Congress in their responsibility. If we change and fix amnesty laws, people won't come here to apply for amnesty. They can do it in their home country, and that would be a problem solved, and no president would have to do that. It would just take our elected officials.
So the thing is, Carol, it's true that Title 42 is not like a cure-all solution to our immigration problems. However, it is at least a tool, maybe the only remaining tool that a lot of our officials have down there to deal with this massive surge and to then take it away during the height of the season with the problem already getting worse. I mean, you can say you're getting rid of a Band-Aid, but it's a pretty big Band-Aid, and the blood flow will get, even more dramatic here over the summer.
Right. Yeah, Democrats can't decide if COVID-19 remains a pressing enough concern to force 2-year-olds to wear their masks on flights or contained enough to allow illegal immigrants to stream into the country. And the politicized CDC seems to be making all the decisions at this point, and they want whatever the far-left activists want. I think it's a real problem for the Democrats, and it's politically a problem, and it's just a problem for the country going forward. What do we want to do here? Are we going to take control over our border, or aren't we? And yeah, it's a Band-Aid. I absolutely agree. It's not enough. But the Democrats need to start somewhere, and the Band-Aid might be the place to begin. Yeah,
I mean, this decision to jettison Title 42 is a policy disaster that also happens to be terrible for them politically. And the Biden people are like, let's do it. We're going to stick to the plan next month. Stephen, call me a cynic, but it seems like these Democrats who did not care at all about border security, all of a sudden they're very concerned about it. They're worried about Title 42. Every single Senate Democrat last August voted against an amendment from Ted Cruz, which would have enshrined Title 42, protected it. They all voted no. They all voted against it 8 months ago. And then they've seen the light. It's like this come to Jesus moment. Oh, actually, Title 42 is vital, Mr. President. It's almost as if they are reading polls and focus groups and pretending, at least for a few more months, to care about this issue.
Well, I'd never call you a cynic, Guy, but
you.
I do defer actually to some of the wisdom here of Democratic strategist James Carville, who recently said that Americans generally like immigration. What they do not like is disorder or chaos. We just got out of the field at Echelon Insights with our April polling, and what we found on immigration sentiment does show this, that Democrats and Republicans united are livid about what's going on at the border. 58% combined disapproval. It's a huge number, but there are other huge numbers that we also found. Between 50 and 77% support for almost every solution under the sun. Building a wall, more drone surveillance, amnesty for dreamers, increased student visas and seasonal visas. Americans just want to see something happen. They're willing to accept almost any solution besides open borders, which is the only one that is underwater. But what we have right now is the perception of de facto open borders. And what James Carville said, chaos and disorder,
right.
And that doesn't work.
The chaos is bad enough now. 220,000 encounters and tens of thousands of gotaways just last month, and then you explode it when you get rid of Title 42. I mean, half of that number last month were Title 42'd back to Mexico and other countries. If that tool goes away, the chaos and disorder that the Ragin' Cajun warns about will be front and center, unavoidable, and I think that's why a lot of Democrats are like biting their fingernails on this. Panel, stick around. Now, it turns out that Twitter is not Mr. Musk's only target. Earlier this week, he tweeted this, quote, "The woke mind virus is making Netflix unwatchable." That was after the streaming giant reported losing subscribers for the first time in over a decade, causing its stock to plummet, now down 35% from just 3 days ago. Netflix blames the troubles on increased competition, inflation, and pulling its business out of Russia. The company now says it's considering a crackdown on password sharing, and potentially introducing ads into its streaming content, which I thought the whole point was to not have ads. Anyway, those changes could further alienate subscribers. Ask yourself this: if you got kicked off your ex's account, would you sign up and shell out for Netflix yourself? Panel is back. Carol, Leslie, and Stephen. Stephen, I know that Musk and others are saying, oh, this is about Netflix going woke and now going broke or whatever. Could it just be a quality of content issue? Could it be a competition issue where there are so many options out there? I'm not sure this is like a simple political explanation.
Yeah, I actually buy Netflix's explanation here for why they're seeing this sharp decline. This has been coming for a long time. It's the market opening that all of their now rivals saw in 2019, 2020, when we saw the beginning of Peacock and Disney Plus and Paramount Plus and, HBO Max. It's that Netflix hardly owned any of their super popular intellectual property. Their most popular and heavily viewed shows were Friends, Parks and Recreation, and The Office. And none of those things are on Netflix anymore. You have to go to their competition now, who have taken their IP back. Like Star Wars is no longer on Netflix. You have to go over to Disney Plus for it. So what you're left with on Netflix is a huge focus on international content. I think they're really rebuilding their content library for non-English speakers. And that makes a very different environment for who's going to be watching.
Carol, how many of these services do you subscribe to in your house?
So I'm not a big TV watcher, but I will say that
Except for
whenever
this
I do
show.
go
Excuse
to
me.
Netflix,
Except for this show.
Obviously,
Thank
except
you.
for this show.
Okay.
Any show that you're on, Guy Benson,
Oh,
I'm watching.
thank
But
you.
look, every time I do go to Netflix, I do feel that there's a level of wokeness that is prevalent there. And what Netflix viewers know and Netflix execs are realizing is that wokeness is boring and unoriginal, and it's very conformist, and you can't create good art staying within the lines. I mean, I'm just thinking about like things that I've seen on Netflix as I'm scrolling past it, but Dear White People, the female Viking warriors, pregnant Japanese men, there just isn't an audience for this beyond a fringe left that wants this. And so Netflix was doing great when it put out, say, the Dave Chappelle special. I think less woke, less broke. It's pretty obvious. Yeah, but they were doing, at that point, they were, had a higher share value.
Leslie, on this issue of password sharing, I'm not asking you to incriminate yourself or anyone that you know, but allegedly this happens from time to time, especially when there's like 17 things that you have out there and maybe someone dog sat at your house for a week once, and she's a Hulu subscriber, and the password is saved, and you kind of want to watch something that's on Hulu, just totally hypothetical that I'm bringing up here, could the crackdown that they're talking about, could the crackdown on password sharing actually annoy people enough that it could end up hurting them, even though it's fully within their rights to do it? Like, I'm not disputing that. It could just annoy people, and maybe annoying their customer base isn't really what they need to do right now.
I have 2 teenagers that use my password. They're not getting their own password. So yeah, I'd be one person, one mama, that would be annoyed by this. Look, this has nothing to do with wokeness. I'm sorry, okay? You know, I'm the liberal on the panel, and I can honestly, I could say, can I laugh out loud at that? What it has to do with is Netflix recently increased its prices, and you have people paying more for gas in their car and some other items, groceries at the market. So people are looking and saying, this is just not a priority, one. Also, to the other panelist's point earlier, spot on. Right now, you didn't ask me, I'm going to tell you though, Guy, and I hate to admit it, but in my fantasy, I can binge watch something someday, somewhere, at some time. And so I have all of these lists on Hulu, on Apple, on Amazon Prime, on Netflix that I never get to. But I think during the pandemic, when a lot of people were home and locked down or working from home and not out and about as much, they said, okay, this is my life, this is what I'm going to do. And many people had more time, especially if they were unemployed, to binge watch these things. So I think it's not a priority price-wise. The price increased, and then they have so many other options out there. And lastly, so many other things to do with their lives than just to sit down and to watch something on the box.
Yeah, and you just listed 4 services, and I'm like, check, 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 and check. We've got all of them. But I find myself going to Netflix less often, because this is like not as appealing. The stuff that I'm hearing buzz about is elsewhere. I think that maybe, you know, content is king. That could be the simplest explanation, with some other stuff out there muddying the waters a little bit as well. Panel, don't go anywhere. Tonight we pay respects to a fallen competitor, CNN Plus. Warner Discovery announced their multi-billion-dollar platform is shutting down next week after less than a month in operation. Who could possibly have seen this humiliating failure coming besides everyone? If CNN Free is struggling to attract viewers, how was CNN Pay going to work exactly? Well, it didn't. The panel has returned. Carol and Leslie and Stephen. Carol, I am not gleeful over this. I'm really not. People are going to lose their jobs. A lot of people are. And not just, you know, the big names who are going to be just fine. There are hardworking producers and people behind the scenes just trying to earn a living. That said, I'm trying to understand how many people got together in a room many times and decided, yes, this is a good idea and it's going to work.
Right. I feel bad for any of the non-millionaires being let go from CNN Plus today, but who thought this would be a good idea? It's baffling to me. And it just tells me that somebody got fleeced here. Absolutely, somebody got convinced into something that could never work. Because like you said, who saw CNN's very low ratings and thought, no one wants to watch this for free, but perhaps they want to pay for it?
Leslie, who has apparently chloroformed the landscaper from earlier, which was a good move. Here's the thing. I'm not surprised that this didn't work, that this was not a viable platform given the offerings and the whole deal. I am a little shocked by the scope and speed of this implosion. That's what caught me off guard. What about you?
I would agree with you. I didn't, one of the things that I think a lot of people are sick of, and it's not just with CNN, I'm going to echo the sentiments with Netflix, but switch it around. I have to say, in our business, we have to do a lot of research for our jobs, right? For me here on TV, on radio, and when I write columns. And I get annoyed that I have to subscribe and sign up and provide my email, blood samples, and pay to read an article where I can find the information and the stats that are in that article elsewhere and for free. So I think there's a few things here. One, if you're not number one, look, if you're not selling hamburgers at your joint, don't branch out and franchise. Two, right now people don't want to pay more for more stuff that's not a priority. And three, especially when you can get that stuff elsewhere for free. And that's the situation with CNN, and I think we're seeing that with Netflix and other things that are online that people pay for or don't want to pay for or don't want to pay more for.
Stephen, somewhere Jeff Zucker's hanging out, and he's got to be thinking, what, like this was my parting gift to this network that he steered into some very choppy waters through a series of editorial choices. I mean, this was sort of his baby. Now he's out. Now it's gone. That escalated quickly, as they say.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case, and I think pretty soon we'll see Brian Stelter hanging out alone with Zucker as well. But yeah, I'm not one to dance on graves too much. I mean, I've been on the receiving end of a network launching a project and then getting cold feet immediately when things are not going well super fast, and that really stinks. But it is the case that CNN Plus was always built on uneven ground. They have a really unpopular brand with a majority of the public who distrust it. So having people pay for that service never made much sense. I am glad to see Discovery try to drag CNN back towards nonpartisan ground. I think it's going to be really good for the network. I will say, on the record, I like watching their foreign coverage or their coverage of foreign wars.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's something I like watching.
No,
there.
Clarissa Ward is amazing. They've got some talented people.
We need more of that. And CNN, they can do a good job there, but no one wants to watch Brian Stelter pretend he's not a Democratic activist.
Carol and Leslie and Stephen, up on a break. Great work, guys. Thanks for dropping by.